All right. Welcome, everyone. Today we'll be covering HMIS Agency Staff Training Guidebook. And we will start with the table of contents. So today we're going to be covering a few items. So HMIS referrals, search functions, enroll existing households, create new households, the HMIS mandatory touch points, HMIS bed list, dismissals, and project exit. And then we'll also be covering a few items on the Built for Zero initiative. So to get things started, we're going to jump right into referrals. And just a side note here, the way we've got these items organized is respectfully. So technically, this would be the life cycle of a household entering in HMIS and exiting HMIS from start to finish. Typically, we would receive a referral. In any case, we would search for a client and complete mandatory touch points. Check in and check out of beds, and dismiss out of project exits. So getting started with HMIS referrals. How to create a referral. So what we've got here is a screenshot of a participant's dashboard. And just to highlight, we're in the DHS Clinical Coordination Program, Coordinated Entry. Majority of our referrals will be coming from Coordinated Entry. Here at Arlington County CoC, all of our participants funnel through Coordinated Entry, and then they are referred out into our CoC services. So for our folks that are sending out the referrals, this is how you would complete or create a client referral. From the client's dashboard, towards the mid to bottom end of the dashboard, there's recent referrals. There's a plus new, and you would simply click that. I would like to make a note, there are also other ways of doing this. There's possibly 5 other methods using Social Solutions HMIS. Here, I just want to highlight, there is a toolkit banner on the left-hand side that can drill down into these functions of HMIS. So if there's a referral that you would like to make, there's also a way of going about it by dropping this referral title and going in it that way. My goal here is to present the most fundamental, most easiest way to do this. By doing it through the client's dashboard, you have acknowledged the client's first name, last name, and case number. This is the exact client that you're looking to refer out to, either a shelter or rapid rehousing or PSH service partner. So doing it through this screen, in my opinion, would be the easiest way to make sure that you're packaging the correct participant out. So once you click the new, you'll be presented this screen. To where will you be sending this participant to? You have really only 2 options here. You can send out to another site or to a program. So the program would be if you were to refer someone within your organization. So for example, if I was clinical coordination program and I wanted to refer this this participant over to targeted prevention, for example, that would be a within referral, and I would select to program. But I would say majority of the cases we would be referring out of our organization. So for DHS CCP, we'd be referring out, for example, to one of our shelter providers. In that case, you would be selecting to site to refer out. So after selecting site, hitting submit, you're then presented with the referral screen. A couple things are packaged up here. Try to get as much on this screen for folks to kind of get used to. But the first question is to identify which site. So which CoC partner will this referral be going out to? Once you've identified the CoC partner, the next drop-down box would be the program. So it would look identical to this screen, to this drop-down list, but it would be a list of the program names. With that being said, you select your site name, select the designated program that you'd like the participant to go to. And to make life very easy, make sure that you are selecting dismiss from program so that you're doing two things at once. You're referring the participant out of the program, and at the same time, you are going to be dismissing this participant because they are no longer active in your current program. So placing a check mark in the dismiss from program and selecting the dismissal reason, and depending if it was a successful completion. So typically, if we've found a vacancy at a shelter placement, that would be considered a successful completion out of coordinated entry, for example. But in some instances, you might have a referral from a shelter to a shelter, and it might have not been a successful completion. So depending on the circumstance or the scenario, do identify if it's a successful or unsuccessful completion referral. Once all these areas are completed, you would then hit submit. How to accept the referral. So now that we've created the referral, we've dismissed the participant out of our current program. Now the participant is in a gray area in HMIS. So for the receiving end, so for the CoC partner that's receiving this this individual from, or household rather, from coordinated entry, I highly recommend taking a look at the view pending referrals on a weekly basis. But nonetheless, I believe we have some things in place to inform you that there is a referral pending on your end. But to access this, you would select the dashboard icon just to come back to your home screen. So this is considered the home screen. This little speedometer up here on the top left corner is considered the home page link, the dashboard link. And from here, you would select the first option, view pending referrals. And when you come here, you have two options to view pending referrals from a different site within my enterprise. So enterprise meaning your entire HMIS system, or a different program within my site. So again, as noted when creating the referral, if you're sending it within your organization, you would select a program within. But if you're receiving this referral from outside, which I would assume is majority of the time, you would select a different site within my enterprise. So external referral versus internal referral. And then select submit. You will then see this pending page where you can now manage, accept, or deny, reject the referral. So here you would see the participant's name, where they are coming from, the reason for deferral, reason for referral, and the referral date. There is a drop-off date. So if we don't address this, the system will automatically drop the participant out of the pending queue. And we would have to follow back up with the sending agency to pick back where that participant went, what happened with that participant. So my best practice here is make sure that we have someone in place that's taking a look at this on a weekly basis at the very least. Over here's your take actions on the top on the right hand column. You've got the referral details that will drill down into the participants' demographics, participants' details as well. So these two areas will give you more in depth of who this participant is and where they're coming from. And then obviously you've got the accept and do not accept. So that is the referral process in HMIS from start to finish. I'll be handing this over to Andrew to go over search functions.
Okay, so now we are in need of searching for a client at 3 levels. There is searching within a program level, a searching within a site level, and then a searching within the entire enterprise level. We're going to start off with the searching within a program level. So here we have clicked our tachometer or speedometer in the top left corner to get back to the homepage. Now, I believe we censored out a few of these boxes that are now highlighted in red in the beginning, but these boxes are now important for us to understand how to conduct a search in HMIS. The first thing that you should do is look at the top box that is highlighted in red in the top banner. That is your program box, program name selector. The first thing that you want to do before you conduct any search is to make sure that you are in the correct program. You can click anywhere within this box to change which program you are in if you have access to multiple programs. So make it a good habit to always just make sure that you are in the correct program before you initiate a search. Second box to pay attention to is the search terms box. A good practice for searching for your client is just to search by last name. You can also search by case number, or you can search by a certain number of letters within a participant's name. I go with 3 usually. So these methods will vary in effectiveness on a participant basis, usually depending on how common their name is. So let's say you're looking for a John Smith in your program. If you search Smith within the program, you may get a ton of results. In that case, you may want to try searching by their case number to narrow it down a bit. But if you're dealing with a participant that has an uncommon name, like say my name, for example, you could just search Dubin, Dubin, in the search terms box, and that should be able to give you a narrow view of your client. The next box that you should pay attention to is just to the left of the search box. This is just going to restate the program name for you. Nothing, you don't need to click on it yet. All you need to do is just verify that it matches the program name box at the very top. Once you've verified that you're in the correct program, and once you believe that you are using a correct search term, you can just hit the search box at the very right that is highlighted there. Next slide, please. Other points to bring up when using a search, you can do a blank search within a program. So let's say we get to this screen here, and you did not enter a search term at all. It will return you a list of everyone who is currently active within the program. But in this instance, just for demonstration purposes, we have not found anyone within the program with the last name fake, again, used for demonstration purposes. Just a note before that, I'm running a little bit out of order. If you are able to find your client, let's say you search Dubin in coordinated entry, and you're able to, it comes back with the results that you need. You're done searching from this point. You can click on the client's name and let's see. Yeah, you can just click on your name and you're done at that point. But since we do not have any results for the person that we are looking for here, we are going to need to expand the search beyond currently active participants within this program. Just a note, if you're looking for a participant who was, let's say, in this program, coordinated entry, but was dismissed some time ago, they will not show up within this type of search here. This only parses through currently active participants within the program. So anyone that is previously dismissed will not show up in this level of search, but they will show up in a site level search, which is what we will go over next. So we're back on the home page, but you can also do this process here from the previous page. So I would call that the search results page. So you can do this from either there or here. So we're going to be going back to the button that I told you is next to the search button. I told you in the 2 slides ago now that you don't need to click this. But now you will be able to click this to expand your search. So notice how the title highlighted in red, DHS Clinical Coordination Program, now matches the site name as the program in the top banner. Just a note about what is highlighted in red. At the very end of the site name, you will see a parentheses just containing an uppercase C. No need to worry about this. This is just an indicator that you are aiming to conduct a site-wide search. So it's just there as a reminder. Okay, so we've conducted a site-wide search, and this time we get results. So hopefully at this point you'll be able to find the participant that you are looking for. To find the correct participant, let's say there's back to the John Smith example, there's a bunch of John Smiths in the program, or in this case we have a bunch of fakes in the program. You would verify the one you want that you are looking for, usually by their SSN if they have provided it, or more importantly, you can verify it by their case number, which you can see is under the text box that we've put in there. Once you find the client that, once you verify the client, you can click on their participant name in the leftmost column. It's if you notice, the names are in blue. Once you click on a name, a small little pop-up box will appear where you can access the client's dashboard, their touch points, amongst other things. Now to go over to the opposite side of the table, you have the site enrollment column. In this column, you will get one of two options: the currently not enrolled in any programs in site text in red, and in green you'll have the currently enrolled in site. So remember that we are doing a site search here. So let's take Andrew Fake, for example. He may be enrolled in, if he didn't show up in the program search, but he is showing up in the site search, he is going to be enrolled within another program inside of DHS Clinical Coordination Program. Uh, and now let's take a mod fake, for example. It shows that he's currently not enrolled in any programs within the site. What this is these are clients that have that designation. They were previously enrolled within the site or the program, and they have since been dismissed from either the program or the site. So this is how you should be able to find any dismissed clients So just wanted to bring that up. And we will touch up later on how to enroll clients from other programs within your site. Okay. So let's say you've exhausted both options since then, and you have still not been able to find your client. The last place that you will want to look is a method of an enterprise-wide search. So first thing to do is to click on your speedometer in the top left corner to return to the home page. And then on the home page, you will see this button highlighted in the red box, which is enroll from another site. This will bring you to a new page with a participant search box. In that search box, you can enter a last name or a case number there to find the client. If you find your participant verified by case number, date of birth, or social security number, you can click a checkbox on the very left side of their record in the table. At the very bottom of this new page, a program start date box and an enroll button will then appear at the bottom of the page for you to enroll the client. If you've exhausted all of these options at this point and still not found your participant, you can then go forward with creating a new one within HMIS. So to go over enrollments and touch points, I'd like to give it back to Ahmad.
Thank you. All right. So as Andrew noted, so we've searched within our program, still didn't find the participant. We searched the site, still no found. Now we search outside of our site, so all the other projects and programs within HMIS, still no luck. At this point, we're going to be creating, well, this is actually enrolling an existing household. So creating is actually the next slide. So taking one step back, if we do have the participant in HMIS, the participant has been created by coordinated entry, for example, years back, and here we are re-engaged with the participant in our services. To enroll a participant into your program, you've got two functions here. So enroll from a program in this site. So enrolling a participant who's currently enrolled, just been processed through a different program by the same provider, or enroll from another site. So you're pulling in a participant or a household that's received services from one of our CoC partners. So these two functions would be how to pull in someone that already exists in HMIS. And as Andrew noted, both of these links will take you into a search box, search screen, where you will then search by last name or case number, and then you would identify your participant or household in the case of a family, and you can then place a check mark on each name that you would like to enroll into your program, and just make sure that you complete the enrollment date and hit submit. So enrolling existing household all plays under the homepage dashboard, second and third take action items. Now creating a brand new household. So just going back to what I was earlier saying, if you've exhausted the search within program, search within site, then you actually search the entire enterprise outside of your current site and still no luck, and you verified this, that the individual truly does not exist in HMIS, you would then select the fourth option down from take action, which is add a new household. Again, just to reemphasize, please make sure to properly search the system for the participant you're intending to create. If you do not find the participant in the system, you may then create a new household. Please avoid creating any duplicates in this system. The kicker here is just following the protocols of searching within your program, searching the site, then searching outside your site, just to make sure that you're following the right flow of search functions in HMIS. So now that we've identified this, and we're going to go ahead and select add a new household, you come to a demographic slash participant detail page. And the first question is to identify the participant's relationship. So the first person, so in the case that we have a family, the first person that we would like to create would be the head of household. So self head of household. And then we would follow that up with the spouse, partner, or children, or children. For a single individual, we always will default to self head of household. And here's some notes about that. But identifying the relationship is very important. And just on the note of families, this is, I believe this would be the point where the case manager would ask the household who would like to identify as the head of household. And in a lot of cases, the head of household is the individual receiving the services. So they are the ones that are engaging in case management, receiving benefits, or the main head of household that's occupying that shelter bed that requested and received the shelter services. But do make sure to ask the household on who they would like to identify as their self-head household. For singles, by default, self-head household. So here we've got the demographics page. So once we identify them, you come to the screen. It's a little distorted. We have to zoom out here, but we do have the main required HUD demographic questions here plotted out on the side here. But before we get into these, the first question is actually the system reiterating or asking again, who is the self-head household? So for the main head of household, please make sure to place a check mark box here on the top banner right up here. This is in efforts to, for custom built reports or any general reports, this is a quality check on head of household. So identifying them within the family household ID versus their participant ID, this would actually match the records and we won't have demographic errors in our validation report. So for all of our head of households, please make sure to place that check mark again on the top banner. Then you're now going to be funneling in through all the HUD required demographic questions. So we got first name, last name, and name data quality. So we've got a few data qualities here. The data quality is a drop down, as you guys can see here, that provides a few options. For name, for example, it would be full name reported. Second option would be partial name reported. Third option would be client refused. Fourth option would be client doesn't know. And then the fifth option, which we will never, in my opinion, select, is data not collected. The reason why we would not select data not collected in HUD's definition, data not collected equals the case manager failed to ask this question while collecting data. So in other words, we have failed to do a piece of the puzzle that is required by HUD in HMIS. However, client refused and client don't know or doesn't know are valued answers. So in the case of an undocumented or a DV survivor, in a lot of cases, we would be selecting client refused and client doesn't know, respectfully, for those individuals in those households. So nonetheless, when in doubt, make sure that client refuse or client don't know is being utilized in the case that the participant does not want to share that type of data, or simply just does not know that the answer to that question. So then we've got here SSN quality HUD. So just going back on undocumented and DV, for those two instances, as written in our HMIS governance, we would then utilize 999999 for the SSN number, and then for the SSN quality, we would select client refused or client doesn't know. For date of birth, in the instance of a DV survivor, we only want to know the year that they were born to protect the personal identifying information, the PII. We would enter in January 1st and the year that they were born. The idea here is to, when we're running custom built reports or APR reports, this is our effort to identify our age range of folks that we serve within a specified project. So 1/1 and the year would be accepted for DV survivors when entering date of birth. Now, for the date of birth quality for a DV survivor, we would still enter in full DOB entered. That would be the date of birth that we would be using moving forward in HMIS. That would not change. Gender, primary language spoken, race, ethnicity, and veteran status. These are all required. The primary language spoken is an internal DHS requirement. We would like to know who we're serving in their primary language to see if we need to expand the language line, for example. But in essence, once you've completed all these mandatory, which they have asterisks on them, so you essentially can't get out of this screen without entering in these data points. So once you've completed this, you are then now on the bottom banner here, which I know you guys can't see too clearly, but ultimately it states that everyone above is going to be going into this specific program that we have listed on this start date. If all this reads correctly, you would hit save, and the participant will then be enrolled, or created and enrolled. For our family providers, before you get to this area, there's this box right here, right under the last question of veteran status, where you can click here and add additional household members to the household on the same page just by clicking on this link. So it will literally duplicate this top half again in order for you to create the child, the spouse, the partner that is a part of that household. Once that's completed, then you would revisit this bottom banner where you would select everyone in this program on this specified date and then hit save. Mandatory touch points. So depending on the project type, right? So we've got rapid rehousing, we've got PSH, we've got emergency shelter, we've got street outreach, targeted prevention, we've got drop-in centers, hypothermia, we've got them all. So depending on the project type, your supervisor or your program manager might have some custom assessments or touch points rather in HMIS that they would like you to complete. Aside from those, so not to get confused with the ones that have been built out for your project specifically, to either address a campaign initiative or an internal audit purpose, the mandatory takeaway from HMIS requires all participants in HMIS to have a HUD assessment at entry, update, so depending on the circumstance, an annual if they've resided in your program for greater than a year, and an exit assessment. Along with the HUD assessment, a services provided case note is required at every engagement with the participant. So if we're engaging with this individual once a month or twice a month, we should have a services provided case note illustrating what the engagement was for and next steps into housing, hopefully. And if they're at housing, how they are doing or what are our next steps for our next follow-up. So make sure that there's case notes in HMIS. This essentially tells the story of the participant, and when the participant graduates out of your program and possibly goes to another agency, CoC partner, there's a story that the case manager can follow simply by running a case notes report and reading through all the case notes. I will make a note on case notes once we get to that screen on what I would consider acceptable data versus unacceptable. But 2 mandatory assessments. So not to get into the multiple release of information, so the ROI, not to get into the SPDAT, the 1010 assessments. These are all project type required. So depending on your project, you will have to do these assessments. But nonetheless, an overall approach for HMIS and HUD state and local purposes, HUD assessments is a mandatory, no matter the instance, for all participants in a case note. So here's the HUD assessment, just to kind of go over a few items here. So for folks that have seen this, great. If you haven't, it might look a little overwhelming, but it's not, I promise. So first step here is make sure, so now that we found our participant, we want to complete this HUD assessment on them. We've got to make sure that we are in the correct site and correct program. You may have access to multiple programs, either within your site or outside your site. In some cases, if you're a shelter case manager, you might have access to all the other shelters within our CoC. So when searching, it may, HMIS may jump you over to that program. Just make sure before completing the HUD assessment that you are in the correct site and program. Once you verified that, you would then select at what point we're collecting this HUD assessment. So you've got 4 options. All participants need an entry assessment. So project start, completed at entry. Project update. So this would only be utilized if there's a change in income or health within the year. For example, John Doe entered the program with $0 and no health conditions. 2 or 3 months later, John Doe, Mr. Doe, found employment, visited a doctor, found out that they had a disability, and now has reported it all back to you as a case manager in your check-in. The guidance here by HUD is to go back into HMIS and not delete or edit any HUD assessments. So the entry assessment would have read with $0 and no health conditions. You would then go back in and enter in a project update utilizing the auto-populate, which I'll talk about in just a second, and enter in those new figures. So for income, if it's earned income, you'd enter in the dollar amount of how much they're receiving, and or if it's non-cash benefits, for example, health insurance and health information. Best practice on update is verify and confirm that what you're receiving from the participant is in fact true. Or maybe in some cases for income purposes, possibly wait until they receive that first check so that it is, 100% happening, and you won't need to go back and undo what you did. So to minimize any hassles or heartaches with HMIS, just make sure that the update actually is true and non-changing. So it's not going to change within a week or change within a month. The project annual assessment is completed on all participants that have stayed in a program for a year or greater. The project annual assessment must be completed a day after their anniversary date. So if I was in the program January 1st of 2021, and here I am on January 1st, the case manager would have to complete a HUD annual assessment on January 2nd. And this is required for all. Project exit, just as important as the project start, must be completed for all and any participants, so including children and in family households or spouses or partners, and as obviously the single adults. So project start, project exit, no matter the case, will be required. Depending on the circumstances of project update, might be utilized, may not be utilized. Project annual assessment only utilized if the household has stayed in your project for greater than a year. And in some cases for PSH RRH, it would be continuous. So every other year or every year, you would have to go back in and enter in an annual assessment for those households. To make life easier, I can't go without highlighting the auto-populate function. So here on this top banner, before you start drilling through all of the different questions, which depending on the project type, you might be seeing different questions. So shelter might look different from PSH HUD assessments. But nonetheless, the fixed values, so not variable, so income and health conditions are variables, so they may change. But all the other fixed, so where they came from, so living situations, who they are, all those data points. When selecting the auto-populate function, it will preload the entire assessment, and all you'll be left with minimal questions to answer. So if the participant or household has been in our system, already exists, chances are they have a coordinated entry HUD assessment completed. And you can actually see that once you hit this drop-down box, it'll read the program and site name that they had that HUD assessment completed and the date. Best practice here when using Populate is to use the most recent HUD assessment. But I highly encourage folks to use the auto-populate. But once you do use the auto-populate, please make sure that when you're reviewing through each tab, that everything does sit well with you and is actually true. So this kind of goes into data quality versus data integrity. Data integrity meaning all, the responses to these questions are true to the scenario or true to the participant that we're actually serving. Versus data quality, meaning that all the questions are being answered. So I think you would switch on your data integrity head and run through each tab just to make sure that everything pulled in as accurate as possible. So that is HUD assessments in a nutshell. But nonetheless, this is the most critical part of HMIS. Mandatory, must be completed for all and any participants within our CoC projects. So locally funded, HUD funded, or state funded. The other assessments would be services provided. So as I was highlighting on the case notes, mandatory at every engagement to be completed. The do's and don'ts. I've seen different types of case notes being completed. So there are some instances where we have case managers that might have had an email that was a critical email for that participant, where they have copied that email and pasted it here into the notes section and saved. That works, but just keep in mind that this is public information. So it is up for audit and accessible to all executives within DHS and the continuum of care. So feel free, but just make sure that the email is directly related to your engagement with that participant at that point in time. My highest suggestion of do is short and sweet. 3 sentences should sum up what you've engaged, what you've discussed, the next steps, and the ongoing plan with that individual. Some instances that might not be the case. It might read a little longer. You might need 4 or 5 sentences, but short and sweet is my opinion. If there's a fellow case manager at another CoC partner that's reading your case note that may need a more in-depth explanation or more details, they can always reach out and ask for those, for those details verbally or through an email. The don'ts. Be careful what you write. So quoting a participant, for example, if they have used vulgar language or rather inappropriate language, or your description of what occurred could be read inappropriately, that would be a huge don't. I would illustrate it as best as possible, but please make sure to be professional and know that not only your boss, but other executives within DHS and the CoC have access to these case notes and do audits on these case notes at any given point in time. So once you complete this case note, it is your name that's getting recorded. So everything that we do in HMIS is timestamped and recorded by, so your name. So just keep that in mind when completing the case notes. Forms of ID is another set aside touch point. I'm a huge fan of this touch point. I believe it has actually gotten great traction in the past couple years, where individuals may come in for the first time to receive services with their picture ID, proof of residency, a piece of letter with their name and their address on it. And this might be the only time that we actually have everything packaged for this participant. I highly recommend case managers to take those, scan them in, and upload them onto the forms of ID. Later on in life, you never know that they might lose that letter of residency, they might lose their driver's license or their proof of identification, or in some cases, all the way on the bottom of this forms of ID, there's a DD 214 for our veteran status. So if they have proof of their veteran status, that would be a great point in time to upload it into HMIS. So as we get into housing options for our PSH, rapid rehousing, OPH, and transitional housing project owners, it'd be easier for them to identify the barriers and ease of housing So this has definitely, assisted our participants in getting housed more rapidly. Even if the ID is expired, believe it or not, it's an easier way to bridge the gap between the participant and DMV to get them a newly reissued identification card. So I'm a huge fan of forms of ID. Brought it into this screen so folks can kind of see it, get used to it, and hear my whole little thing about it. So those are the mandatory touch points. Just to kind of go back, HUD assessment services provided in forms of ID. And if there's any other touch point that does come about throughout the year, we'll have set aside trainings on those assessments. So for example, the biggest one that it comes to mind is the point in time assessment that is conducted once a year annually. So there is a point in time training that goes along with that. So we would further explain that PIT assessment at that point in time. Right. So additional assessments based on project types. So I've got two that I'm just going to highlight. This is a 2022 update. So these are brand new assessments. They recently just got updated into our system. And it addresses coordinated entry. So for our coordinated entry folks, there are two additional assessments, a coordinated entry assessment, which is very short, and a coordinated entry event. Both of these instances serve as case notes, but they funnel into our coordinated entry APR, which is not our typical APR. So apparently HUD has created a new APR just for coordinated entry. It's still in my opinion, it's still in the beginning phase. But I do want to expose folks to the coordinated entry assessment and coordinated entry event. And I can always follow up with Tiara and the CCP coordinated entry team on these two assessments, but they are new. And if we do decide to start, once we do complete these, we'll then be able to run the CE APR. The second project type is treatment on wheels, which is a PATH-funded project. There are 4 additional required state and HUD assessments. So you've got the outreach and services contact, outreach and services engagement, referrals provided PATH, services provided HOPA PATH, RHY, SSVF. Depending on your encounter with the participant, you would either have a contact or an engagement or a referral. So I don't see all 4 being completed for one individual, but a mixture would be required. So depending on the situation, depending on the scenario, you would complete each one of these along with the HUD assessment. So just a reminder, between coordinated entry and treatment on wheels PATH, HUD assessment is still a requirement here. So it's HUD assessment first, and then any additional assessments based on project type. My hopes for coordinated entry is to possibly play with these assessments so that we can actually generate a CE APR to kind of data quality check through that report and see how that plays out. For PATH, I know that we're high levels of PATH right now, so we have touched up on these newly added assessments and have covered this independently, but nonetheless, for our CSC partners, these are the requirements based on project types. Next thing is, once we've enrolled our client, we've got our client in our project, we've now completed the HUD assessment and the case note. For our shelter providers and some of our housing providers, we have HMIS bed lists. And the bed list must be updated every day. So in order for them to be accurate in real time, in order for coordinated entry, Tierra to know if there's vacancies at the shelter, for example, the importance is heavy on making sure that our check-in and check-out are as accurate as possible. So for starters, checking in a participant. Fairly simple. You come over here on the toolkit banner on the left-hand side, drop down the referrals and housing, and you have housing check-in. You select housing check-in, you identify the bed. So there are rooms, so your rooms and beds will be, so your site manager had already organized your bed list setup. So as the case manager or the shelter staff that would be entering check-in and checkouts, you'd identify where and which bed they'll be occupying. Select add participant. Once you click that, a little mini pop-up bar will appear. Search for the name. They should already be enrolled. Remember, we just enrolled and completed the assessment for them. And you would simply just save and add that participant to that bed. Check out. Nearly the same process. Still coming over here on the top, on the left. And again, there's multiple ways to do this. You can actually do this through the participant's dashboard. So again, just to reiterate, reemphasize, this is the most fundamental way of going about it. So in my opinion, this is the simplest way of going about it, but there are different ways to maneuver around HMIS to get to your screens. But nonetheless, if you're on the client's dashboard and you see it read, check out of bed, by all means, you can do it through that screen. But if you, when in doubt, refer back to these training guidebook, and you could come over to slide 23 and see that it's a shortcut to go through the toolkit, referrals and housing, and now we're selecting housing check out. Important indicators, so you can actually check out multiple people out of your beds. So if you've got 4 singles in a single shelter that have all been housed on the same day, you would place check marks in each, confirm their participant's name, confirm that they're in the actual bedroom, and their occupancy start date matches their enrollment date. And now we're going to enter in the checkout. So step 1, place a check mark. Step 2, enter in the checkout date. Very important that the checkout date must match your exit date. So 3 things have to match. The HUD assessment must match the exit date, and the exit date must match the checkout date. All 3 must match. Once you've got your check, your date, simply click save, and you have successfully checked out the participant or multiple participants out of your bed list. Now to manage a bed list. So some instances we might have accidentally checked in a person into the wrong bed, and we would like to delete that, or we would like to add a different person. So we would like to just kind of edit, change, or delete. To do this, again, left toolkit, referrals and housing, manage all rooms HMIS. This will take you to this screen. So you would identify which room, which bed you'd like to manage. So for example, manage bed 1, you would click on the take action, manage. Here, it'll automatically take you to an add new participant page. So if there's no one in that, if it's a vacant bed, here's an easy way to add that participant as well. So as I noted, multiple ways of doing things. but we're trying to manage and delete or change something in that bed list. So maybe there's a date that doesn't match the enrollment date. So they entered in the program on January 1st, but I checked them into the bed on January 5th. So the system put it in January 5th. So we need to backdate that to January 1st, their actual enrollment date. You do that by clicking on Edit History on the top right banner. That link will take you to this page. We've got a long list of participants that have occupied that specific bed. So this is a history list of every and any person that has been in that room or bed. And here you can actually edit the occupancy start date into that bed. You can edit the occupancy end date if they've already been dismissed and you got a validation error saying that the bed list at checkout does not match the exit date. This is how you would go back in and correct that. And also here, if this record, for example, should not exist and the participant actually was in bed 2, you can delete that record by putting a check mark in the box and hitting submit. So nonetheless, you can make some changes to the dates, remove and correct the end date. So edit, start, end date, delete bed state. Click to submit to save changes. All right, I'm going to turn this back over to Andrew so that we can go over dismissals and project exit.
Thanks, Ahmad. Okay, so now that we are going over dismissals, the first thing to know about the dismissal process is that you should always complete a HUD assessment at exit before you dismiss a client from their program. That's just the first thing that I want to state. Ahmad has already gone through the inner workings of the HUD assessment, so I will just be here to remind you of how to get back to the HUD assessment page. One option is within the sidebar on the left. You click on the touch points button, and a drop down will appear with the record touch points button. You click that, and and then this screen will pop up with record touch point and select touch point. And then from the drop down menu, you have to scroll down a little bit to find it, but you will get to the HUD assessment. You can also access the HUD assessment touch points by going through the participant's dashboard to find it. Before you initiate a HUD assessment, make sure again that you are in the correct site and program. If you have done all this correctly, completing an exit assessment in the correct program before dismissing the client, this will avoid validation reports later on. So that's why it's important that we make sure that we get this correct. And then moving on to the actual dismissal page itself. So the first thing is to once again make sure that you are in the correct site and correct program. And then from there, you can find the dismiss participants page by going to the participants drop-down list in the sidebar. Third from the bottom is the dismiss participants button. This page that is then shown will pop up. And if you look at where the Ahmad's cursor is currently, you can see a various amount of search options. As previously stated, we recommend using last name or case number search to find the client. Now, once you enter in some information and you click search, you see where Ahmad is currently cursoring around, a table will appear with a list of clients who match the criteria that you are searching for. You should be able to find your participant within this list. You can verify that it is the correct participant in the event that they have a common name like John Smith by looking at their age, their case number, date of birth, and SSN if applicable. So once you verify that you are dealing with the correct client, if you go back over all the way to the far left side of the table, you can see a little checkmark box. Just click this check mark once and the client will be selected to be dismissed. You can also you can click multiple of these at once, so it doesn't have to be just one at a time. Now, two things will appear, actually maybe three, will appear once you have selected even one client. The program end date box, which is currently hidden by this little drop down menu from the dismissal reasons. We'll get to that in a second. The program end date box, which is just to enter a day in standard format. This is important to make sure matches with the exit date provided in the HUD assessment. Please make sure that the dates match. Otherwise, we will get validation reports errors later on. And that's just not fun to go through and have to figure it out. So it's always best to just get it right from the start. After that, you select a dismissal reason from this little pop-up list. We have many dismissal reasons. However, if there are need for any new ones here, please you can provide a recommendation to the HMIS leads in form of an email, and we can always get more dismissal reasons added to the list. Then once you've again verified all the information, verified that you're in the correct program, selected the correct clients, you can finalize the dismissal by hitting the dismiss participant button at the very bottom.
Thank you, Andrew. So before we get into Built for Zero, that would essentially be the life cycle of a participant in HMIS. Referred, searched, or created, or enrolled. Now they exist in your program. We complete mandatory touch points. First that comes to mind, which should be defaulted for everyone, is HUD assessments, case notes, and any other assessments that your supervisor would like you to complete. But those two, very critical for HMIS. Then checking them into a bed if that's applicable for your project type. So depending if you have a HMIS bed list or not. Then once they've completed their services, we would then go back to HUD assessment at exit, check them out of a bed if that's applicable, then dismiss. And that concludes a household or single participant in HMIS. And these are all efforts to avoid validation report errors or data inequalities, data issues within our APRs. So just huge side note for folks. Within Arlington County CoC, we try to live up to a 5% error rate or less. Since COVID, it's been static, but we're working and we continue to work rigorously to make sure that we are at that 5% error rate or less. And in following these screens, we can successfully be at 100% accurate data and 100% completion, 100% data completion for our HUD state and local reports. Very important. Okay. So now just getting into our CoC campaign. So for folks that are aware or not aware, we are part of the Built for Zero, Functional Zero for All campaign. This is a nationwide campaign, and the goal here is to identify, this is really specifically for our shelter providers and our street outreach providers. So this is at that level of project types. So specifically for shelter and street outreach. When identifying a participant as either chronically homeless or a veteran, we would automatically enroll them into our Arlington Zero programs. For our families, if they've resided in the program for a period longer than, I believe, 120 days, but it could be it could be a scenario where within 120 days, so like 30 or 90 days in, you've identified that this person needs to be in our Arlington Zero housing list, our by names list. You would then enroll them along with their children. So you would enroll the entire household into Arlington Zero families. For our Arlington Zero, for our single adults, these are individuals that are not chronically homeless, that do not fit the veteran status, but have been in a shelter, have been occupying a shelter bed, or have been out on the street for a very long period of time, for over 90 days is the rule of thumb. For those individuals, because they don't fit specific chronic or veteran criterias, but they have high levels of barriers, we would then enroll, once that's identified, we would then enroll them into Arlington Zero single adults. Then lastly, Arlington Zero TAY, which stands for Transitioned Aged Youth. That is defined by any individual or household between the ages of 18 and 24. Would be defined as a TAY participant. In some cases, that TAY might be a head of household of a family or an independent individual. Nonetheless, family or single, a TAY household would be enrolled under the Arlington Zero TAYs. So these are our 4 cutout programs in HMIS directly related to our Built for Zero initiative. So previously, we used to have to, find our program, enroll them into the program, their designated program, and then we would have to complete additional assessments, which in some cases was tedious, definitely a heartache for a lot of folks. But thank goodness, with Andrew's expertise, we have found a new way of collecting data for the Built for Zero. So the only requirements now moving forward for our Arlington Zero programs is cut down to really the bare minimum, which is simply enroll the participant into your program, into the designated Arlington Zero program. And then once the individual is either housed or redlined, for example, if they don't meet the criteria or just, went AWOL, for example, you would dismiss. So enroll and dismiss. That is it. No requirements for touch points or additional assessments, no requirements for anything else but enroll and dismiss. So when would this happen? You would have the participant in your program, got them in the shelter program, for example, 90 days has passed, person's not chronically homeless because they don't have a disability. They might have the length of homelessness, but don't meet the disability criteria, or they don't have veteran status. I would then enroll them after the 91st day into the single adults program, and then hopefully this individual will get housed through this committee, which is the Unified Shelter Committee, that goes through these by names lists, person by person. At the point of housing that individual, only requirement for the case manager that that's representing that participant is to go back into HMIS and dismiss. And when dismissing, selecting the appropriate reasons for dismissal. So exit to PH would be exit to permanent housing, for example. So just a quick snapshot of the 4 different programs and when we would utilize them and how. But now pulling in, so enrolling. So now I've got an individual that's chronic vet that enroll from another site. I'm assuming that I'm a CoC partner, so I do not live under the DHS site. I live in one of our, partner sites. And the first step is 1, come to the program. So select your top banner. So click on the top banner, select DHS, get the drop-down list. All staff, CoC agency staff should have access to these 4. If not, please feel free to shoot us an email and we'll get that corrected. But nonetheless, you select your program that you intend the individual to be enrolled in. Now we're in the correct program and we're going to enroll from another site. So just like we did in the previous slides where Andrew was showing, or Andrew and I were showing how to do this, same process would be followed. So enroll from another site. And then the last but not least is dismissing the participant once they're housed, hopefully, or an outcome, an end result. You would then click dismiss, make sure that you're in the correct program, and select your individual, verify the case number, date of birth, SSN, and your program end date. So just a side note on end date, program end dates and start dates. The day of the enrollment or exit doesn't necessarily matter. It really, we run these on a monthly basis. So as long as the individual is being entered into the program on the correct month and year, we're good to go. And as long as that they're being dismissed in the correct month and year, we're good to go. So whether it's on the first day of the month or the 28th day of the month is honestly irrelevant for reporting purposes. So very high emphasis on the month and year. Once you verified that, got your correct program end date, the right designated reason, you would then select dismiss participant, and that would conclude all your efforts into Built for Zero. So for our unified shelter meetings that happen bi-weekly, when they go through the list of currently active clients, which honestly, we come into these programs, these 4 programs, and we simply click currently active, or as Andrew was mentioning in the search function, if you leave the search function, search banner empty and just hit search within the program name, you'll get a list of the currently active. So nonetheless, our unified shelter meeting entails going through the currently active participants and making sure. So if the participant needs to be dismissed, make sure that they're dismissed. If the participant is not in the list, in the by names list, make sure that you're enrolling that individual. So best practice here for supervisors or staff that staff leads within shelter or street outreach teams is once a month, come in, make sure that you visit the 4 programs. It might, depending if you're a family provider or not, or a single provider or not, visit these programs, take a look at their currently active list, and make sure that 1, your participants are either on, or 2, or removed from the currently active list. And that concludes the Built for Zero and overall HMIS staff agency training. We'll go over some Q&As in just a second. Thank you all so much for attending. and participating through today's training.